Okay, so now we're going to do the Southern tea cakes, and again the difference is between the English and the Southern is the fact that these are actually a rolled out cookie. They do have egg in them. They do have some baking powder, baking soda in them as their leavening agent, and so this is going to be just a little bit different. So I'm going to cream together my sugar and my butter. I'm going to start off with the butter, and I'm going to let it run on the machine for a minute, and then I'm going to gradually add the sugar while beating. So I'm going to add this sugar. I'm going to add probably about a third of it. By the way, I had 4 ounces of butter, a cup of sugar. I'm going to let that completely incorporate before I add another third of this sugar. Then I'm going to add the eggs one at a time. It tells me to add an egg and a half for a half a recipe. Well, I have really small eggs, so I'm going to add 2. And I'm going to allow this to I always like to scrape the my bowls before I start adding my eggs. I'm going to allow each one of these eggs to completely incorporate before I add the next one. So once I've added that last egg, I'm going to come back through, and you know me, I'm going to scrape this bowl again. I'm going to add the vanilla. And I'm going to add a tablespoon of buttermilk to this. Okay, so I'm going to add my baking soda to my flour. And I have 2½ cups of AP flour and a ½ teaspoon of baking soda. And then I'm going to add this slowly to my creamed butter mixture. Don't overmix this because we really don't want to have a lot of gluten in our Southern tea cakes. My grandmother would take the Southern tea cakes and she would make them, she would add more and more flour to them, and they got to the point that the last few were really very tough. And I want to have a really nice, tender tea cake. So once I get this completely incorporated, which means I can't see the flour anymore, I'm just going to shut down the machine And then I'm going to wrap it in some plastic wrap, and I'm going to refrigerate it for probably 2 hours just to get a nice chill on it. That way it doesn't stick to my work surface. Time to roll out the tea cakes now. Those are the southern ones. Generally, I like to add a little bit of lemon extract to this recipe, or something to kind of jazz it up just a little bit, but that's just a personal preference of mine. This is going to be rolled out a little bit thicker. We want to roll this out to about 1/4 of an inch because we want to have that kind of cake-like texture to it. I don't know how familiar y'all are with the southern tea cakes. My grandmother used to make these, and then she would use those as the shortcakes for strawberry shortcake. So again, we want to flour our table, a little bit of flour on top. And we're going to start rolling it out. I don't know that it has to be round, but it's a force of habit for me. Keep it moving, that way you're assured that it's not stuck to your table. Again, we want this about 1/4 of an inch thick, so don't go crazy when you're rolling it out. And, you know, nice ruler. And darn, I'm good. That is 1/4 of an inch right there. So kind of check your thickness, guys, periodically until you're sure that you're rolling evenly, and you got to kind of get down and look at it right there. You can't look at it from here and say, hey, it's even. Give it this, okay? Just check it out. Okay, I'm going to use a biscuit cutter, and I'm just going to press it down. And remember, these are going to have just a little bit of spread on them, but I'm going to cut these as close as possible because I really don't want to have to re-roll this much. I see a lot of people rework dough with new dough, and then they keep doing that. For me, it's kind of hard to tell how much of that dough to be able to control my gluten. So I'm not really fond of that method, but hey, it worked for my grandmother. So if it worked for my grandmother, can't be that bad. I actually kind of like just taking this and kind of pushing this off to the side, and I'll dust my excess flour off here in just a second, and I'll go for another piece of fresh. It's a half sheet, so there's 12 cookies there. Thanks, Vanna. Vanna, I'm editing your thumb out. Okay, so now that I have the tea cakes all rolled out and panned, I'm going to take just a little bit of milk and I'm going to brush them lightly with the milk. And then once I've brushed them all, I'm going to come back through with a little bit of sugar in the raw, or sanding sugar, whatever you want to use. You can even use regular granulated sugar. And I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit of the sugar on top of the cookie just to give it a little bit of sweetness. Now please remember, Southern tea cakes are not an extremely sweet cookie. So if you're expecting it to be that way, if you're expecting a sugar cookie, it's really not. Okay? We'll go into the oven 400 degrees for 7 to 9 minutes. We don't want to brown the entire cookie. We want to definitely brown the edges though.